Hello and welcome to another Successful Garden Design Show with me, Rachel Matthews. Now, for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, the season is drawing to a close as you go into autumn. But for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, spring has officially sprung. Well, it did. Now it seems to have reverted back to not such nice weather, but if you look outside your window, there are loads of spring flowers and bulbs. So the good weather is definitely on the way. And in this episode, I want to discuss two things that people don't necessarily naturally think to put together, but they are very interrelated. And they're two things I didn't think I'd ever be discussing in one episode. Those of us living in the UK can't have escaped noticing there is a bit of a fuel shortage and prices are spiked rather high at the moment. Now, whilst we all hope things will go back to normal as quickly as possible, even if they do, and all of the troubles overseas which are causing this knock-on effect for fuel prices, even if everything resumes and goes tickety-boo tomorrow, we're still going to have very high food prices this year. It's baked in. Farmers are buying diesel at higher prices, so the cost of production of food is going up. And as we all know from previous times when there's been a hike in fuel prices, they go up very quickly, but it takes a long time for them to come back down. So by the time we get to harvesting, prices may still be quite high. Add on to high fuel prices, and of course, it doesn't end with just the harvesting. There's the delivery and processing of the food. So in this episode, I want to look at how you can incorporate a little bit of food growing into your garden, as well as quite a lot. Now, none of us can control what goes on in the world at large, but what we can all control is our own little world. So that means getting a little bit prepared, growing a few extra vegetables and things like potatoes that are very easy to grow. They're perfect for beginners. They don't need too much work and fussing. And also they provide very nutrient dense. They fill you up. The carbohydrates are very valuable. Now, some people think there's no point in growing things like potatoes because they're so cheap. Now, the most expensive time is at the end of the winter before the new crops have come online. So if this time next year a jacket potato costs you £5 per potato, it starts to make you think, actually, however many you can grow in your back garden, you could be saving yourself a great deal of money. So yes, a price increase is pretty much guaranteed in all food and probably most things across the board. But if this continues for any length of time, it's going to get worse. And if we reach a situation, and I hope we don't, because, as someone who's naturally very positive, but my motto in life is hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So if we reach a situation where the farmers can't actually get the diesel to harvest the crops, well, that kind of almost doesn't bear thinking about. But there could be really quite bad shortages because, of course, the fuel, if we're trying to import food, everything that we do revolves around fuel. So, just stop oil, careful what you wish for, because you just stop the world when there is no fuel. So prices could get really quite horrific. And as crops take a minimum of 3 months to grow, as we're at the start in the UK at least, or the Northern Hemisphere at least, at the growing season, now would be a really good time just to put a few potatoes in the garden, just as a little bit of insurance, if nothing else. So what I want to do in a little bit in this episode, but also in future things I'm doing, is show you how you can grow vegetables in your existing garden in an attractive way. So you're not looking at this ugly vegetable patch, because that's what puts a lot of people off, and also how to minimise the work as well. You can grow them in pots, so you don't even need to have a big garden to grow a few potatoes. And at least if you've grown a few potatoes, even if it's not enough to see you through the entire season, when things get short, at least it helps mitigate that a little bit. If everybody does that, it makes a difference. In Russia, the gardeners there, in their worst times, they used to grow 60% of their food supply. I think gardeners in Russia are called dashniks, or a name similar to that, but their gardens are about 600 metres square. So they can grow an awful lot of food in that. But so here in the UK, we've got tiny back gardens. So that's going to be the focus. How do you grow as much food as you possibly can and still have the garden look good? Because many of you probably aren't at the point yet, and I include myself in that, aren't ready to dig up the entire back garden and put it down to vegetables. I still want my garden to look beautiful because I get a lot of pleasure from that. It's only if things got really, really, really bad that I would turn over the whole lot to vegetables. But I don't want to do that. I want to do a mixture. So I'll show you what I've done in my own garden and how successful that's been. So I got a little bit carried away and decided I would build myself a 3-tiered planter so that I really could maximise the space in my garden. And it was quite a trial building it. It took me an awful lot longer than I could ever have anticipated. The other reason I went for a planter in this particular location is because initially, before I got the garden, they had a path right the way down that left-hand side, and the concrete was so deep and thick it was absolutely impossible. So I ended up the soil was basically hardly anything, so nothing would grow there. So I thought, well, I might as well utilise the space. The front half and the supporting structure were pressure treated timber, and the back side of it was all recycled pallets. And then I lined it with plastic because obviously I didn't want to be putting any more treatment on the pallets, plus they probably wouldn't have lasted anyway. Then I filled it full of soil that next door donated and some manure, and then dug up various things and put them in. Now, the issue with a 3-tier planter is obviously getting enough light in place. So the middle layer, that doesn't get too much. So the strawberries do struggle, but it's fantastic for lettuce. So what I do now is absolutely fill that with lettuce, and that keeps me going all summer. I don't need to grow, and rocket as well, I don't need to grow any on the allotment. The bottom section I have for potatoes, and the top half, that absolutely bake. This year I'm going to set up an irrigation system, but in previous years all that's grown there has been herbs, and it's a lovely little herb garden. So all in all, it is very productive. So it has certainly, really utilised that space. And as you can see, the wood has now blended in with the fence behind it, and this is how it's pretty much blended in with the rest of the garden. I don't really notice it in the summer months, as you can see, barely see it. So all in all, it's been a good investment of time and labour. So here's a bit of a hidden in plain sight idea. Now, potatoes grow incredibly well in plastic buckets. So I've got 5 here, and this is on the driveway, and I've got some really cheap recycled timber, and I made a frame for them, which, as you can see, has done a pretty good job of hiding those ugly plastic buckets. Then it's just a matter of putting some straw over the top to completely hide it all. So the potatoes are underneath those pansies, and I've also put in some peas and some beans and also some nasturtiums to take over from when the pansies have finished flowering. So for all intents and purposes, for passers-by, bearing in mind most people haven't a clue what potato foliage looks like, it just looks like a bit of a planter on the drive. Soon as the peas and beans have finished, then I could, if I wanted to, just lift up the potatoes and bring them into the back garden to maturity. So it just goes to show there's any little space you've got, you can grow vegetables. It doesn't have to be a lot of work. The straw stops any weed seeds getting in, and this year, as I say, I'm going to add in an irrigation system. So all I've got to do is turn the tap, and that'll be it. Pretty much any garden can be a food producing garden if you want it to be. If you want it prettier, just add some flowers into the planters. And the more of us that can grow a bit of food, if things do get tight in the food supply chain, it just takes some of the pressure off of it, because there's lots of people living in flats that have no opportunity, don't even have a balcony where they can grow some food. So if we all do something, it does make a difference. And also, homegrown tastes absolutely delicious, and the nutrition is so much better than what you can get in the supermarket. So it's well worth growing your own on many different levels. So in future videos, I plan to do a series where we'll look at how you can just incorporate a few vegetables for a little bit of peace of mind into the garden, and then how you could step it up if you think, oh, actually, things are getting a bit dicey. We'll just grow a few more. And then the full on, okay, the whole garden has to go down to vegetables. So we'll do it in layers so you can build up over time. Now, someone I know had a conversation with a woman. He just made an off-the-cuff comment like, I hope you're well stocked up with food for the coming months. And she turned around and said, oh no, I don't want to be a prepper. Like it was some really weird, bad, selfish thing that people were doing. And it's like, hang on a minute, you don't want to be prepared to be able to feed your family and yourself? Really? Have we reached peak stupidity yet? I guess we may have done with that, because even squirrels with the brain probably, what, that big? I don't know how big a squirrel brain is, but it's not huge. Even they know to squirrel away some food for when there are lean months. This woman apparently said it as if it was some dreadful thing to do, but this is how our ancestors used to survive. We wouldn't be here now if they hadn't have been prepared. What's unnatural and weird is not being prepared. Our just-in-time supermarkets can run out of food in a couple of hours if they can't get the supply chains. If anything happens, everything is so delicately balanced that the last thing you want to do is not be prepared, because those are the types of people that end up panic buying when there are shortages, and then they exacerbate the whole situation. Whereas if people calmly just every week add a couple of tins and a bag of rice or flour to their weekly shop, and everybody does it in a very calm, controlled way, then if there are lean months and times when supplies are running low, no one needs to panic, buy and cause chaos. So as this world is getting crazier by the day, I think the most sensible thing is that we all, those of us that can, grow some food, even if it's a tiny bit, just to help ease things for those that can't. With all my garden design courses, I give away a free course called the Food Garden Formula, where I show people how to adapt their existing garden to grow more vegetables. So this course really is to get the aesthetics right. So I show people how to transform their existing garden and have it so that it looks good and is food producing. There's also some extra videos that I've made on all of the experiments I've done over the years growing food, and I'm going to update that this year with what I'm doing, because I'm doing a whole new system this year. And we've also gone into food preservation techniques, because it's one thing to grow the food, but you also need to store it. And I did an awful lot wrong. So this isn't really a course for showing you how to preserve the food, more like how not to do it, to be honest. So if that's what your main interest is, I would go to someone who specialises in this. This was just me experimenting and videoing and documenting it, but it's still very worthwhile knowing just how much you can do wrong. And as I say, this is free for anyone that does any of my garden design courses. But what I've decided to do, as I really think it's so critical that we all grow food, is to make this a standalone course. So over the coming weeks and months, I'm going to add a lot more content to it to show people how to design a garden from scratch, assuming they haven't got any of my other courses, so that this is a standalone course. So over Easter, I've decided to do it as a standalone for £49, because ultimately it will retail for 99 or more, and then you get it at a discount while I'm adding the additional content. You also get 1 month's free access to the Successful Garden Design community. So you can ask any questions, you can upload your designs and get feedback and get inspiration from others. So if you'd like to get the Food Garden Formula, as I say, it's included for free with all of the garden design courses, and they are on a half-price sale over the Easter period, as well as the planting courses. So this course really is to show you how to plan your garden so that it works growing vegetables. So it's the aesthetic, so that it looks good. I'm not actually teaching too much on the how-to, because that's not my main area of expertise. And also I've learned learned that I know about growing vegetables from Nate of Garden Like a Viking, and he's done a tremendous course. So if you're going to turn any sizable area over to vegetables, I highly recommend his Viking growing system. So, obviously I can't be teaching his trade secrets. So I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't be right and fair to him. I'm just going to teach you how to make it look good. And if you want to know the how to step by step, get his course. And also you have access to ask him questions about any vegetable growing problems you may have. And as I say, that's not my area of expertise, although I am learning for my own benefit. At the moment, the course just shows you how to adapt whatever design you've done from the main course, shows you how to adapt it into growing food. And you'll get access as soon as I've done the extra tutorials on how to turn it into a food producing garden from scratch. Then you'll have access to all those materials as well. So you're getting it at a discount because I'm going to add to it. And as a bonus to the food garden formula, I'm also going to be including how to plan an allotment properly, because I've just taken on, well, quite a task. And I'll also cover what I've been doing in my other allotment with the magic of AI. This is how it should look this year compared to previous years' attempts. Things haven't gone as well as I would have liked. So I hope you've been inspired to grow at least some food in your back garden. And even if you haven't, grow some anyway, because I think you're going to need it. So on that cheerful note, have a good Easter. And until next time, take good care.